This is the second part of the presentation to the Electronic Identification Conference. Identity is extending the identification service in various ways. For example, through the introduction of biometric forms of identification. Biometrics will be introduced in a privacy-friendly, reusable way. The approach is for a trusted party to take a photograph of a person and send it to Identity with the name of the person. The person accesses the photograph online and asserts it is their photograph, and they ask two other previously verified people to agree that the photograph is of them. The identity of the person is also verified against three other organisations by demonstrating that the other organisations have a record about them. Once the photograph is identified, then a person can use it for any other organisation who requires a photo ID for the person. Such organisations might be the Passport Office, the driver's licence, club cards, etc. Photo IDs can be attached to any verified identity. It does not have to be printed on a card, but it can be shown on a mobile phone or on a telescreen or on a checkout screen. The identity approach to identification fits well with the concept of federated identification. Federated identification is where one organisation agrees to accept identification established with another organisation. Some people call this single sign-on, but it is broader than single sign-on. Federation can be made to work very easily if a group of federated organisations agree to use an identity provider to include the end user as part of the federation. The following set of screens shows how Identity itself can use the association with a bank to simplify the costs of collecting money from customers. The organisations independently identify the person and agree to allow the person to divert and perform actions on the other organisation's website. Let us now look at how to make a payment. In the first case, the end customer already has an account with a federated bank. They're first going to identify themselves to Identity because they wish to become a customer of Identity. One of the sources that Identity uses for identification is the bank, because Identity, the company, is federated with the bank for the purposes of payment. So the person identifies themselves to the bank. The bank has now been used as an identification source. At some later stage, while at the Identity website, the person wishes to make a payment. The default will be to transfer money from the bank account used previously for verification. Other payment options will be available. The payment is authorized by the user entering a two-factor verification method that is done by the bank or authorized by the bank. This is typically getting a code by SMS, then entering the code into the screen. If the person does not have an account with the bank, then they cannot use the bank as a data source, but they can be asked to create an account and then come back and pay with that account. Let us take us through that sequence. So first is to register with Identity. Now it comes time to make a payment, but the bank wasn't used as an identification source. And so in that case, we can't fill out the bank account number in the BSB because we don't have one. So we go off and create a bank account. So we go to the bank account area, create an account. Some later stage, we then come back, fill in the information on the bank account number and the BSB, and again we affirm the payment with a biometric. We will be creating a super ID which will identify people for superannuation purposes. Any superannuation website will be able to allow the user to perform actions on another website. This is particularly important for transfers of superannuation benefits. It will be useful for finding lost superannuation. Organisations using Super ID will reduce cases of lost super because a person's lost super can be checked whenever they make a deposit to a super fund. If we use it for passports, the Passport Office can use the photo ID, but it could also agree to allow people to verify their photo ID with their passport photo. More importantly, it could allow banks to use passport photo IDs in return for the banks allowing access if the person consents to bank histories. In other words, federation allows organisations to share identification information, but via the user themselves. We have an association with the Australian Access Federation, which is the federated group of universities and research organisations. And we hope to integrate identity into that federation. Individuals have certain rights to information that are held about them, and organisations holding information on a person are legally obliged to answer yes or no for no cost to the question, do you hold any information on me? They are further required to give the individual that information if they request it, though a reasonable charge can be levied for supplying the information. Government departments do not welcome such requests because they believe something might go wrong. For example, they believe if they supply direct electronic access to an individual's data, they may have to meet service level obligations. The Tax Office believes that a person accessing their own tax information via a service like Identity might somehow compromise the integrity of the tax file number. These difficulties can be easily addressed, but the common reaction of most organisations is that if there is a chance of something going wrong, then they should not do it. This ignores the positive benefits that the organisation can obtain from allowing electronic access. To give an example, we find that 25% of all addresses in the Electoral Office are incorrect. Most commonly, the person has moved and not bothered to change their address. It is critical for the working of representative democracy that the enrolment address be correct when the election is held. Green ID could inform the Electoral Office, with a person's consent, that their address has changed and put in place a process for the electoral roll to be corrected. Another example relates to Medicare. At the moment, we access the Medicare public website to see if the Medicare card claimed by the person exists. If this is the first time a person has accessed the website, a letter is sent to the individual with a password so that the person can get detailed access to the Medicare records. If the person does not want a password to be sent, then we could tell them that to the Medicare, or Green ID could arrange for the password to be sent to the person by email. This would increase the take-up of the Medicare Access service and would help them keep Medicare records up to date. As a side benefit, it is our belief that the approach could remove the need for Medicare to issue a new health ID card and instead use an electronic ID controlled by Medicare and the individual themselves. What of the future? Rather than less identification, we see more. We see data continuing to be kept in tight silos, but we also see an evolving process of the individual gaining electronic access to their own information. We see Identity providing tools to the individual to help them access their own information and control its release to other parties. We see many other organisations like Identity providing competition in this identification space. We see identification becoming standardised, and we see a wholesale introduction of federated identity organisations using identity providers to give individuals access to their information.